Hi there, I'm Des.
And I'm Tim, and together Des and I head up the men's ministry Momentum Australia.
Momentum has multiple functions, but primarily our aim is to help men to succeed in life, to do life better.
We run a weekly radio show that goes all around Australia where we talk about anything and everything that relates to men.
And you know, we encourage men to do life in community, to do life with other men where we can be accountable, we can be welcomed, we can be open and honest about what's happening in our world.
We'd love you to have a look around our website. That's momentumaustralia.org. There you'll find a bunch of resources to help you on your journey and all of our previous episodes and topics.
We thank you for your interest in Momentum Australia, and we hope you enjoyed this video today.
All right, well, welcome to this week's Momentum. Once again, it is Tim and Des with you, and once again, hey, we've got another great show lined up for you. But before we get there, we exist for you. So thanks so much for tuning in. You know, we're here just to try and help all of us do life that little bit better. So we look at some of the pointy stuff in life and try and give you some help and solutions and thoughts and stuff to help you keep moving forward in life. MomentumAustralia.org, by the way, is our website. You can find out a whole bunch of resources on there and previous shows too. Des, my Irish co-host and friend, how are you this week? Are you well?
I'm always good, man. Always good. Yeah, no, we're doing really well. And that's a joy and a privilege to do this show this week. It's really cool. And just while we're on talking about facilities, we just want to mention the Momentum Care Line, which is a support line for men run by Careline Connections, our good friends and partners. And our number there is 1-800-000-MEN. Easy to remember, especially for men. 1-800-000-MEN, which is 636. You can reach out and get help 7 days a week between 9 o'clock in the morning and 11 p.m. 7 days a week. 1-800-000-MEN.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, we are all about connection here at Momentum. And so if you feel like you aren't connected for whatever reason, or there's something in your life that you want to talk about that you don't necessarily want to share with those closest to you, we fully understand that. You can have a confidential chat with somebody on the care line. That's 1-800-000-636. You know, it is a special time of year. It is the Father's Day time. And, you know, fatherlessness is a growing problem, not only here in Australia, but right across the Western world. In fact, statistics show that 85% of single-parent families are fatherless families. And it was back in 1996 that sociologist David Popenoe said the decline of fatherhood and increase in father absence has been shown to be a major disadvantage to the well-being of children. And sadly, it is estimated that around 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes.
Aren't they terrible statistics? It's really bad. And more recently, there's an expert from Harvard who said that existing today, there's no single greater threat to the long-term well-being of children and our communities and our nation than the increasing number of children that are being raised without a committed, responsible, engaged, and loving father. So key. The truth is that we as men receive training in all sorts of stuff, you know, how to do our jobs, you know, how to do life in many ways, but we very, very rarely get training on how to be a good dad. And so that's really key.
It's so true, isn't it? Nobody kind of gives you a manual when your first child is born. It goes, here you go, off you go. The good news is, though, there is an Australian organization that's dedicated to not only tackling the rise of fatherlessness, but also helping equip dads to have healthier relationships and stronger bonds with their children.
This wonderful organization, it's an amazing organization, and I've heard about it so many times. It's called Fathering Adventures. And our special guest on the show this week is the founder, Darren Lewis. Welcome to Momentum.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's a pleasure to join you.
Yeah. Darren, we've as Des said, we've kind of heard about you for a little while. We've had you on our radar for a while, and looking through your website and chatting to you off air. We're so thrilled to have you on the show because we know that you're doing amazing work behind the scenes. For those who perhaps haven't heard of you, well, actually, we'll give you the website straight up, fatheringadventures.com.au. Just jot that down, fatheringadventures.com.au, and you can check that out after the show. But have a listen to Darren first. Darren, let's give people a bit of perspective of yourself, a bit about yourself, your background, and then we'll talk a bit more about Fathering Adventures. But give people a lowdown about who Darren Lewis is and his background.
Yeah, great question. I'm a son. I'm a man. I'm a husband of one. Married to my beautiful wife, Melissa. We've been married now it's coming up to 32 years. Wow. And together we share 4 sons. They're all adults now, ranging in from 29 years of age down to 20. 2 of them are married. One of those couples have 2 children of their own, so I'm a granddad. And yeah, just loving life. Yeah, I became, was in the structural engineering sort of field for a good period of time, until what I believe is my calling came into play, and that was about 15 years ago when we first started Fathering Adventures.
Okay.
And you live in a beautiful part of the world. You should mention that.
Yeah, it's. I want to clarify. So yes, I live in Townsville in tropical North Queensland. It's very beautiful in our winter and maybe spring months. Not so beautiful in our summer months, Des. So yeah, it's. Hey, where in the world is life perfect all of the time? But we certainly have incredibly beautiful cooler months for sure.
Yeah.
So going through your earlier years, I mean, obviously you have a heart for kids. You got 4 kids of your own. What were the things you remember about being a dad for the first time?
Being a dad from the first time, I think, look, to be honest with you, before I was a dad, I didn't have a faith. And so, but I always say, so I came to faith probably, it was my eldest son wouldn't have been 1. So it would have been, he would have been sort of 6 months of age maybe. And the first moment, my recollection of being a dad, and I still have, he's 29 years of age now. But I still have this imprint, it's like it happened yesterday, and I'm sure it's similar for you guys as well. But it was my first miracle that I ever witnessed. I mean, when I saw him being born, and when I saw, I grew up in a home whereby, don't have too high expectations or hopes, because then you're going to get disappointed. And my wife was completely opposite to that. So she had a birthing plan, and her plan was she wanted a mirror in place, and when the baby was born, she wanted to start breastfeeding. And I'm like, this is foreign for this baby. Like, this is just not going to happen. I tried to, don't set your expectations too high. And then I remember when he came out, I mean, Melissa was like, oh, it's beautiful. He's beautiful. Eventually, after about 3 or 4 minutes, the obstetrician had to say, now, Melissa, he's still not out yet. He's just, the head's out at the moment. So you've got to finish the job. You got to push him out. And so as soon as she pushed him out, I lowered it down onto her chest, and he started feeding straight away. Like, as in, he started, it latched on, and it was just, that was miraculous how that happened. So does that answer your question, Des? I think my first memories of fatherhood.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So the next question is, how did you cope with being a dad? I mean, you'd never had that experience. And so there you were, this baby, this thing. How did that go for you? You had to learn new skills and.
Yeah, well, for the early years for me were really quite easy. I think it helped because we were godparents to a little boy who was like 2, and I remember having to babysit him overnight once, and I remember just looking at Melissa and saying, I don't think we can have kids. Like, this is really hard. And and I think, I can't remember whether it was her or our friend who when she came back on the scene was like, look, they don't come out 2 years of age. It's okay. They come out babies. And really, there didn't seem to be a whole lot that he was requiring from me, But so I think, I love just even that, the grace to just be eased into it. But of course, your mind's always turning, and you sort of think I think for me, Des, like, the biggest thing was actually before being a dad. And I remember watching, my wife tells this story. We were watching, look, we're all secure enough in our masculinity. We were watching a Danielle Steele movie, and I think it was called Daddy. And I remember at the end of it, I was uncontrollably crying. I was trying to cover it up, but really I was, and Melissa said, honey, what's wrong? Like, what's up? And I was just like, I just want to be a good dad, but I don't know whether I will be or not. I had these doubts, these concerns, because I hadn't grown up with a great role model as a dad. So
yeah, I mean, I remember whenever my first son was born, and he was handed to me, and I was holding this baby, and I said to myself and to my wife, what skills do I have? What knowledge do I have for me to bring this thing, baby boy, into the world and raise him properly. No skill, just no skill. There was no manual I had, like Tim, you said earlier. I was on my own. Yeah.
It's pretty confronting, isn't it, being a dad for the first time? That's for sure. And I think what it does do is perhaps it brings some of those fears, some of those doubts, some of those insecurities that we have. All of a sudden, it brings them to the surface in a big way. And Darren, particularly when you've got 4, right? I mean, you said you ended up having 4, so obviously, it didn't.
You learned it along the way.
The first one, but tell us then about juggling 4 and being a big family, because obviously that's going to bring with it some struggles. And tell us about, I suppose, some of the struggles that you did go through as a father when you had your full brood running around your feet.
Yeah. Again, my wife and I, usually whenever we're in conversation with somebody and these kinds of questions come up, she usually says, Darren wanted 2 kids. I wanted 4. And so we compromised and we had 4. And look, I'll be honest with you, for me, you're right, Tim, when you said, all of these doubts, begin to rise to the surface. The reality is what I knew was I wanted to be a great dad. I wanted to be the best dad that I could be, but I just purely did not feel like I could be a dad to so many. And that was my greatest fear, my greatest doubt, especially when number 4, I mean, we prayed for a long time, but for number 4, as in I was, so our first 2, first one was a dream before becoming Christians. Second one, we'd just become Christians. It was a wow. We had a lot of troubles, a lot of challenges. He had a lot of medical concerns. It really required a lot of us, and a lot from him. And they're ongoing today. And then he's 26, 27 years of age. So then our number 3 was a gift. We weren't trying. He just kind of came, and it was just this beautiful gift and this beautiful healing gift. Because I've got to be honest with you, after number 2, I thought, is there something wrong with us? Do we not make children right? Is this? And so number 3 came along and was just a gift. He was just he truly was, because he was so placid. He just went along with the flow with us. He was just beautiful. And then so when Melissa was like, I feel like someone's missing, I was like, really? Like, how many children do we need to have for this feeling that you have to be? Because I was doubting. I'm thinking, well, we've got 3. God knows me better than I know myself. Then, okay, so it's more than I asked for. I have these serious doubts about me. But look, number 4, I don't think so. And Melissa's like, yeah, no, I do think so. And so really, we prayed for probably, 18 months or more. And we just knew enough to know that whatever decision we'd made, we need to be on the same page. We need to be as one in that decision. And what do you know? The long and the short of it was, I was sitting there praying on my own. This particular, so we're praying together, but I was also praying alone. And I was praying, and I just sensed that God said to me, Darren, you're in the driver's seat here. And you've always been in the driver's seat. And if you would like, I'm happy to take the wheel. You hop around, jump in the passenger seat, and trust me. And so I kind of thought, okay, all right, well, this is an invitation. And so when Melissa came home that day, I just said, sweetheart, I've been trying to control this situation, really. And if God wants us to have another child, then I'm going to trust that. And we fell pregnant pretty quickly after that. And so God saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And isn't that always the way?
There's a very powerful message in there, by the way, Darren, and I just didn't want to miss it. And that is that you and your wife planned all these things and did things together. And that's a very, very important message that we want to give men, because men can take the lead and they can control. And it's very important in their lives as they go through this phase of their life that you do it in unity and you do it together. and you make decisions together. So I didn't want to miss that point.
Now I did just want to expand on that just a tad, in the sense that I don't want your listeners or you guys to think Darren had it all worked out, still so young. You know, the reality is, what I was wise enough to do was to reach out to a mentor. And he said that, you know, scripturally, Darren, the two of you need to be at one in this decision. Don't make a move to the left nor to the right until you're on that same page. And so we kind of, in faith, sort of trusted him and yeah, prayed and being humble enough, I guess, for God to change. And that's what it was. You know, initially when my wife and I were praying together, she was like, Jesus, change his heart, you know, and I was like, Jesus, change her heart. And actually had to come to that place of, actually, Jesus, change my heart. And you know, the rest is history.
Yeah. Look, we're racing towards a quick break. What I will just say in conclusion of the first is that I think for all of us on the call, and it's good for guys to hear this too, is that we've all perhaps struggled with the idea of being a dad, and certainly those initial stages of being a dad, we struggled with accepting our own stuff that was coming up, I suppose. So I just want to leave guys with that, because there will be guys going, is that normal? Am I okay? Like, you know, is that healthy that I felt like that? And I struggled to bond, particularly for guys as well. And I don't know, we'll perhaps get into this in the second part of the show, but it took me about 3 or 4 months to fully get my head around being a dad, when even, you know, after doing it for 3 or 4 months, it was like the penny didn't drop immediately for me. It took a little while, and I think that's fairly normal for guys. Darren, let's talk about fathering adventures. And you did mention that you obviously you were in jobs before you kind of stumbled into this, which you consider your calling. So tell us a bit about, I suppose, how Fathering Adventures came to be.
Yeah, so Fathering Adventures came to be first and foremost through my own inadequacies as a son, as a man, as a father, as a husband. I came to realize that my past was affecting me, and I needed help. I had to, you know, reach out, and initially, you know, men don't like to do that. So one of the things that I did was I tried to learn as much as I could, and until it got to the point where actually it wasn't so much about learning as it was about healing, my own heart being healed. As a son and as a man and as a father and so on. And so, and then ultimately, and it's like you quite often hear psychologists say this, the reason why they got into psychology was to first diagnose themselves. Right. So it ended up being that we had a lot of opportunities arise very quickly, and they just continued to grow, whereby people would want us to help them, want to help counsel them. And so I went and did some further studies in that space to be able to feel more adequate in that space. And really, after about 7 years, we became so ridiculously busy, dangerously busy, that I pulled back and I asked God to reveal an answer to a question that I had, which is, what have I learned over the last 7 years? What have I learned? And now I'd been so busy in the doing that I really hadn't had enough time to reflect and learn along the way, because the need was so great. And so now pulling back and asking that question, all of a sudden it became very clear to me that 99.9%, there was only ever one person that came that I didn't believe had what we refer to as a father wound. Every other person, man, woman, had father wounds. And so then I asked the question, well, and I began doing some research, who out there is doing something to prevent fathering? Is prevention's better than cure? Who's actively preventing father wounding from happening? And so in my research, I found that very few organizations, very few churches, very few individuals are doing a great deal, at least that's aware, that people are aware of. And so that's really where it came from. Is like, okay, I want to prevent father wounding from happening, and so I'm going to help dads understand who they are and the importance that they have.
Can you explain that term, father wound? You know, some of us might have heard of it. Some of us for some of us, that's a new word or a new phrase.
Yeah.
So what exactly is a father wound? Explain that for us.
Yeah. So a father wound is really something, some sort of deficiency or some kind of pain that we carry into our adult lives, that occurred back with our dads as children. And I think a lot of people say, build a bridge and get over it. The reality is that our past, if left unresolved, affects us and affects us today, and it will continue to affect us for the rest of our lives until we deal with that, until resolution comes. And so when it comes to fathers, one of the reasons why father wounding is so destructive is the fact that is because dads are so very important. And the scriptures, Solomon says it this way. He says that the glory of children are their fathers, and that word glory means majesty, and it means weightiness. And so what Solomon's trying to say is dads, you have such an incredibly weighty role in the lives of your children, and it's a weight that can either crush your children or leave them to just kind of disperse and not hold them sort of true, and so yeah, because fathers are so important, it's usually the way that we are hurt the most. And it can happen through incidences where dad might have said something harsh or treated you harshly, or it could be from dad's absence, and not even necessarily physical absence, but just not being interested, not being involved in your world. The reality is, the great measure of this is our Father in heaven. Like, what did he want for us as children? And he wanted fathers and mothers to reflect his heart and his will for us, to teach us, to train us. And when any of those things fall short of what he wanted for us, that leaves a wound. And the reality is pretty much all of us had a wound because none of us had the perfect father. And as fathers, I can say that despite that, was never my heart to have wounded my kids. And I have great relationships with my kids. But did I wound them along the way? I'm sure I did. And so, we need to forgive ourselves, and we need to be real with our kids and enter into a deep relationship with them for them to be able to have conversations with us.
Darren, I just want to stick on this for a tick because I think it's important for guys to understand, but when you were looking at your life and you'd realized that you were struggling in general,
mm-hmm.
What was it that led you to the conclusion that it was a father wound and not something else? Like, for guys listening, how do they identify that it's tracked back to a father wound? If 99.9% of the people that you saw had one, then there's a reasonable assumption that most guys listening still have one or have had one and have dealt with it. But how do they conclude that that's what the struggle is as opposed to something else?
Yeah, so that's a great question, by the way. The reality is that I didn't know how to be a man. I didn't know that. I was never shown that, really, other than dad going out to work. I was shown what not to do. My dad was what I would have referred to as, at the time, a workaholic and an alcoholic. And so for me, though, as a man, I didn't know that I was a man. I didn't become a man until I was 29 years of age, when there was an intervention of another man who helped teach me what it means to be a man. I didn't know how to father. So there was deficits in me. I knew that. And when I looked back and began working through my past, you can't, my dad never delighted in me. And a father is meant to delight in his kids. My father never spent any time with me, and a father's meant to spend. That's the way we know that we're loved by a father. Children spell, we know this, kids spell love Time. And so when a dad chooses willfully or otherwise not to spend time with you, it sends a very powerful message. And every single one of us have a desire and a design to be unconditionally loved, accepted, and wanted and chosen. And when that doesn't happen, that falls short. We're not who we were really meant to be, and we've got to invite God into that to bring healing into those places, forgive those who hurt us, and understand what we did with that pain as well. And confess that.
So
Is there,
describe to us what Fathering Adventures is and how you got to that outcome.
Yeah, so there's some very key scriptures, and again, ultimately, it came out of an invitation. It came out of an invitation to travel to the US to help co-facilitate a week-long father-son adventures in the Teton Mountains of Wyoming. And in that, really, that was more of, as much as it was an invitation from a ministry over there for me to go and learn the ropes, so to speak. It was actually really an invitation for me to become and understand that I'm a son of God and that he loves me. I'm his beloved son, but also that he wanted to call me up into something greater. So yeah, look, Fathering Adventures is a ministry. I guess in the world's eyes, it would be considered a business, from a legal entity's perspective. And it's really about helping men to be the dads that they long to be, and helping kids have the dads that they need their dads to be.
Wow.
We need help, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. We
Yes.
need help. And sadly, too few men ask for help, ask for directions. We think we have to have all of the answers, as though it's sort of written into the code of our DNA, and it's just not true. We're meant to live in community, and we learn through that.
you say on your website, and I'm going to quote, our guided father and child experiences help you have healthier relationships, stronger bonds, a deeper understanding of one another, new direction, and more. So tell us a bit about these guided experiences that you offer dads and sons and daughters, and I suppose, what are you hoping for them to take away from the weekends or the guided experiences?
Yeah. So the big thing, we're looking for transformation. It's no good in just going and having a lovely experience, as nice as that might be. It's about transformation. It's about turning things around. When I first started Fathering Adventures, I wrestled with the idea of what that might look like. I mentioned it was about preventing father wounding. So should I write a book? Well, no, there's lots of great people who've written lots of great books. Should I run conferences and seminars? Well, that's important too, but men kind of switch off. We've had enough of school, and so men learn best experientially. And so what we ended up creating were a series of experiences whereby dad can come and, first of all, have a lot of fun with his son or daughter, learn what he or she needs from him, and then for him to actually apply the things whilst he's with us, apply the things that he's learnt in that relationship. And first and foremost, I guess, there's, the last thing that God said, right, to his people for 430 years was that he will turn the hearts of the fathers to their children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. And there's no mistake on the order of those things. What we really create an environment whereby dads can do just that, turn their hearts to their kids. And the beautiful thing is the response is always that the hearts of the children turn back to their fathers. And that's transformation right there.
It's powerful. We're running out of time, but I do just want to quickly explore the fact that you do a rites of passage for dads and sons, but also for dads and their older daughters, which I thought was really, really interesting. Can you expand on that for me?
On the rites of passage for sons or the daughters one? Or?
Well, let's start with the sons, but I'm also curious about the daughters and what that looks like.
Yeah. So, well, for starters, again, I'll ask that question. When did you become a man? If you, I can answer, very clearly, and I'm sure you can too if you're married, like, when did you become a husband? You June 22nd, 1991. But when did you become a man? Oh, there's a bit of a gray area there. It did happen over time. Like, so, and what does it mean to be a man? What is your definition of manhood? If you can't answer that question, one of the things that my mentor, Robert Lewis, says is, he says, you cannot become what you cannot define. So if you can't define what a man is, how can you ever be one? And if you've never actually had a process, a moment with that vision for manhood, then what does a man do with that? So it's really important for sons to become men and for dad to be the guide. And my role and our team's role is really to help guide the fathers to give to their kids what their kids need them to be. So with that direction. But yeah, the daughters is very similar. Too many daughters just get missed by their dads. There's an awful statistic on that one. There was a US-wide Roper poll, and it said that only 30% of fathers of daughters believe that their active involvement in the lives of their daughters is vital to their health and well-being. And so that means there's more than actually 7 out of 10, because some dads have multiple daughters. There's more than 7 out of 10 daughters. So 8 or more daughters out of 10 don't have dads who believe that they are important. And it's just untrue. Fathers are so very important, and they're important not just to provide our Y chromosome, in the conception process, or just provision and protection. Those things are important, but also bestowing identity, a healthy masculine identity upon our sons and a healthy feminine identity upon our daughters is crucial. And I love what Steve Biddulph says. If you don't mind me, I've written it down here so I get it right. But he just says, in regards to daughters, he says a lot about sons too, and most people understand that. But he says this. He says, sometime between 14 and adulthood, a girl needs some kind of marker event, a growing up right. Girls have to be deliberately and proactively launched into healthy womanhood. And when this is done well, the results are impressive. A girl takes charge of her life and begins to make her unique way in the world. Now, as dads, as mums, as a society, don't we want that for girls to make their unique way, to offer their unique contribution? Daughters, sons, become healthy men and healthy women by having dads who get it right with their hearts.
Yeah, fantastic. I don't know about you, Des and Darren, but for me, this last half hour has gone incredibly quickly, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface on not only fathering adventures, but all of the stuff that you have to bring to the table, Darren. So let's take a pause there and get you back on next week. And I love this idea of roles and what we as dads are responsible for sowing into our kids. I think let's expand on that next week and some of the key ways that we can really help our kids and heal from ourselves from a father wound, and then try and not create that in our kids as well. Our special guest this week has been Darren Lewis from Fathering Adventures. The website is fatheringadventures.com.au. That's fatheringadventures.com.au. Love you to check that out and have a look around. We're going to get Darren back next week to expand on this some more. In the meantime, of course, love you to check out the Momentum Australia website. That's momentumaustralia.org. And we will look forward to being back with you next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you for watching this week's show, and we hope you subscribe to Momentum so you can find out what's happening in the shows in the future.
Absolutely. And keep an eye on our website too. That's momentumaustralia.org. There you'll find all of our shows and a whole heap of resources to help you on your journey. That is momentumaustralia.org.
Until next time, keep moving forward
with Momentum.